episode of Proof Beyond Reason. I think this is episode 8. We are progressing, moving things forward. Shout out to our sponsors, Matthew Movement, Wear What You Believe. Visit MatthewMovement.com for more information. And today, man, we have a great topic. We have a guest on our show. He's physically not here, but we got him on the phone, and he really gave us some gems to work with as we dive into this topic of racism. Now, for the last few weeks, we've been talking about evil, right? I think we've been talking about evil.
Presence of evil.
And so in the presence of evil, we see all these things come out. We see hatred. We see discrimination. We see abuse. There's signs of what evil looks like. And certainly racism is one of those signs that we are evil. We don't love each other. We're not good. We find ways to pull each other away, and we don't want to unite. Even, I would dare to say, even as the body of Christ, in many ways, and even in some of our historical the things that we've seen, the church has demonstrated, even up to today. You know, we've seen racism. We've seen where black churches will unite, white churches will unite, and they just be completely segregated for one reason or another. You know, whether if that's culturally, that's one thing, but the Latino church generally will migrate to churches that speak Spanish, which kind of makes sense if there's a language barrier. But overall, just seeing how much racism continues to be present in our culture and around the world, this is what we're going to talk about today. So Chris gave us some really good insight. So Chris Busey, who is he is a doctor, Chris Busey, a PhD professor from multiple universities across the U.S. He's taught in Ohio, he's taught in Texas, and recently teaching here in Florida. Has some great insight. He's done some really phenomenal research. His publications are extensive, and he does conferences all over the U.S. and has traveled around the world doing research and really trying to understand what this thing of history and racism is all about. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm only here with G. Geology's in the building.
What's up,
and it's your boy, Mike the Baptist. Ivan the average, Ivan the terrible, religion man, Lord Suave. He is not here today. He's slacking again. But prayers go to him and his family. Hope to see him next week. So let's dive right into it. So as I look at history, we've come a long way from Brown versus the Board of Education, from Loving versus Virginia, where they eliminated the prohibiting of interracial marriages, affirmative action. I mean, we've just progressed so much from that time, yet racism is still present today. And I think we have it so ingrained in us to look at someone of a different color, someone who doesn't necessarily look like us, regardless of where you stand and what your perspective is. If you're Hispanic, if you're black, if you're white, and you're looking at someone who doesn't look like you, who doesn't come from the same community as you do, that may speak a different language, there's almost like this innate thing in us to want to be fearful of what we don't know. And so we want to shy away from it. We want to run away from the unknown, or in many cases, the unknown is seen as bad. And what we talked about last week, we hate what we don't know. We hate what we haven't been educated on. So I mean, what are some things that we see today in terms of racism or discrimination at large?
I mean, right now, just reading just what happened, like literally this week, we have a Chicago man who called the police department saying, "We will kill you," to Muslim civil rights advocates.
Ooh.
Like, that is insane in and of itself, because we usually always associate race and what's going on nowadays with the police, with the black community, but we don't really look at as a whole, like the Asians, Muslims, and things like that as well.
Yeah, we tend to ignore the reality that I can speak for my family, my parents in particular. I would hear stories about my mom growing up in Brooklyn, New York, where she's light skinned Puerto Rican woman, and going to school, she would get into fights with the white kids because they would say, oh, go back to your country, go back to where you came from, learn English, even though she knew English. And then with the black kids, because she was lighter skinned, they would associate her with the white population. Yep. She would have fights with them too. They would jump her and they would try to beat her up too. So the Hispanics, it's not a lot of light shown on the fact that the Hispanic community experiences lots of racism. Yep. Except now, really, when we look at what's going on, we talked about it a little bit last week with the political climate, immigration reform. It's come out. The people, they want Mexicans, they want Hispanics gone, and it's just so interesting that it's coming to light now a little bit more that the Hispanic community has definitely experienced racism from all sides, really, and but not just them, the Asian community, seeing and experiencing racism. I remember watching stories on television, particularly in California, how they had to really fight their way through California to settle themselves in because there was so much discrimination against Asians. So much discrimination. And it's funny because, a lot of dudes out there love them Asian girls, right? Yep. But, it's just, it speaks to the fact that media might focus more attention on the highest of the racial tension, which is against the black community. But there is racism across the board, as G mentioned.
I mean, coming from experience as well, I was what they considered a white kid living in Jersey at the time. And I remember that when my teachers found out I was part Dominican and also Chinese, they automatically wanted to put me in an ESOL program because my sister was in it. And then automatically I had to take a test 2 times, and they had to see that I spoke perfect English.
That's hilarious.
English to the point that I can actually learn from the teachers themselves.
That's what happened to me. When I came from New York, first day here, they, fill out the paperwork, whatever it was. Yep. And because I was a Puerto Rican kid, I was born in New York, raised in New York, family. Mom is Puerto Rican, but she's from New York, speaks perfect English. My father is from Puerto Rico, so that's where, I guess maybe Spanish is spoken in the household, so on and so on. I do speak Spanish as a second language. And, man, immediately they put me in testing to see if I needed to be an ESOL. And I was like, but I speak, at the time when we came, I didn't really speak that much Spanish. My Spanish now is way amazing compared to what I spoke before. My Spanish was horrible. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, why do I even have to take this test? I don't even speak Spanish at the time. And, yeah, they made me take the test. That's so funny. That's so crazy.
All right, we have in Oregon, the Multicultural Festival, we have people, they didn't get specified what names. This happened on June 9th, which was they started putting up on walls a whole bunch of negative connotations, saying that President Trump has an executive order to kill all blacks and all supporters, which is in itself, we see that a lot happening.
Yeah.
As a lot.
Yeah, I don't know what, I know there has been things alluded to the political party in areas of racism, and have been some blatant things coming out of the campaigns and all of that, but it's hard to pinpoint specifically. I think there has been, and I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong. If I'm totally wrong, you want to message me, let me know, proofbeyondreason@gmail.com. Let me know. But to my understanding, there has been more so the assumptions that this political team is affiliated with those, racial groups and so on and so forth. But I mean, it could be true. It could be absolutely be true. But I don't think there has been blatant evidence to say, yep, this is it. We've got this dude. There's a video of him hanging out with them, or there's a audio of him speaking to this party, blah blah blah. Like I don't think we've had that. It's just been a lot of assumption based on support, and somebody could support me, and I could be totally against whatever party's out there. But yeah, it's a weird dynamic. But yeah, people are responding just kind of crazy, just kind of going all out, using it as an excuse. And if it's not checked, then yeah, it puts the political party in question. It makes you look real bad if you don't check that kind of action.
And I mean, it's like Albert Memmi, he did a quote, "There is a strange kind of enigma associated with the problem of racism. No one or almost no one wishes to see themselves as racist. Still, racism persists, real and tenacious."
Straight up.
And I mean, touching upon experiences that I've had, I'm Dominican. I've already explained it. We explained it multiple times. But if you see me from afar, you think I'm white. Like, hands down. You think I'm
from
white.
afar, I'm sitting across from you, G. You are white.
Yeah, I look white. Necessarily by the typical stereotype.
European. Let's be more specific. You are European, my friend.
Yes. But I'm also Chinese as well. But even just living or going to visit, say, for example, in the Dominican Republic, just 2 years ago, just last year, you can hear the Dominicans talking about how there is literal a divide between, you have the light-skinned Dominicans complaining to the darker skins, and they like to associate, or they like to see themselves superior to the Haitians. Always. I've always noticed that from the beginning. You can go there and people are literally just talking smack about Haitians, this and that. And yet you come here and say, for example, when I was in high school, I had these two good Asian friends. I mean, not Asians, but Haitian friends. And we're like, yo, we're from the same island. You're like, we're brothers. Like, that's what's up. But yet you go to the island and there's a complete divide. And a lot of people don't really like talking about that. That's the thing that always gets me, because why aren't we talking about these issues if we're living in the same society?
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I work with a lot of foreigners because of what we do, and a lot of the countries that we work with, Jamaica, Nigeria, Kenya, but particularly the Philippines. It's interesting out of the Philippines in that apparently, and this is what I understand it to be, so again, if I'm wrong, correct me, but I understand that there are products in the Philippines where you can bleach your skin. So they'll walk around with umbrellas to protect themselves against getting darker and getting more tanned, because the darker you are seen as inferior. You're seen as less educated. You're in a different class. So to prevent that, even if you're dark by nature, you're just born and you're darker than everyone else, they do their best to bleach their skin and don't look a certain way. And that's not all of the Philippines, obviously. We don't want to generalize our Philippine community in that way, but to my understanding, that's what's present out there. And it's just, it's kind of it's telling of what cultures across the world experience when you go to different, you go to China, and in China you might be the celebrity because you're darker skin. They haven't seen you before, so you're going to get treated differently. And if you come here and you're from Japan, I had someone I know straight from Japan, and being here in South Dakota, he's experiencing a lot of racism in regard to how he speaks and how he behaves, and he kind of can't get a break. He can't get a break. They're pointing out the fact that he's different, and we don't like what's different. Let's be real. We don't like what's different. We don't like what we don't understand. We're scared of it. We hate it, and and I'm guilty of it. I can be one of the first to admit that, having grown up and living in different places where Polish communities and Black communities and Latino communities, I've seen things where I put a label on people. And that's my default, because I've had certain experiences with people. Maybe I've come across what we call stereotypes to be real. Like, they're not necessarily stereotypes to me. They're realities to me because of what I experienced. I have experienced instances of racism. I've experienced being told, learn English, you know, or go back to where you came from or whatever. I've experienced racism for sure. And, you know, living in different communities and living among different people, my default sometimes is not a pleasant one. If I don't know you, you know, automatically the default is going to say, boom, this white guy wearing this suit is automatically looking at me and assuming this. But that's probably not true. The same thing, you know, black dude, baggy jeans with a hoodie, walking around. He's tall, probably got a mean mug on. The automatic thought is that he's thinking of me or he's thinking of doing something to me. And based on my experience, that might have been my experience with someone who fits those descriptions. That might not really be the reality, but my reality could be I've seen those lived out. And so it's difficult to overcome that unless you're able to just refrain or put a different mindset, get a different perspective on things. And I'm not sure why that's the case, but it is what it is. It's kind of what happens. So,
yeah, I mean, we see a lot of things. Say, for example, if you were to put two kids of, say, for example, a white kid and a black kid together in the same room, or say, for example, an Asian kid, what are they doing within the hour? Playing with each other. Like, they have names for each other and doing all this stuff. But yet, as you get older, you're either getting influenced by what's around you, or your parents keep telling you, oh, you can't associate with this person, and you can't do this, this, and that. The schools, we could talk about the South, say, for example, people are proud of the South and this and that. But we have, say, for example, I went to Alabama this one time with my dad. He's a truck driver.
Alabama. Shout out to Alabama.
Right when they found out, say, for example, I went in, I talked to the people, and I was just like, hey, where's the closest bathroom? And they're like, oh, it's over there. Like, nothing was wrong. As soon as my dad came in, and I had to translate for my dad, the whole atmosphere changed. Like, I was just like, this is crazy. Times have changed. What happened? But then it's something like someone told me before. Yes, times have changed. It's been like a good, decent amount, but we still have people living that hasn't, like, they lived through the Black Panther era. I'm sorry. And you see Malcolm X, all these people, like Martin Luther King. People walked with Martin Luther King, and we don't really talk about these things. Like, some people still have it in their heart. Like, people that used to be racist had to hide because everyone was accepting the new change and the new movement. And that in itself, that, like, we see it, we talk about racial tensions, but we don't acknowledge sometimes that, say, for example, people had to hide. So now when Trump became president, people think that's an excuse because of the things he's talking about, like immigration laws and racial tension that's happening all throughout, like, the Middle East. And then they think that's an excuse or a way to say, oh, now that Obama's out of office, now we have a white president, so we took back. Like, since we always see it since the Jim Crow era, where before it was like only whites can go to this bathroom or drink this water in this water fountain. Now we become colorblind to the sense where we say, oh, your father is usually never around. That's the stereotype that we usually play out. Or your father probably is a janitor, is a cleaner because he's coming from Mexico. I mean, how many times have you heard Mike say, for example, that when you speak Spanish, people automatically assume, are you Mexican?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll get that. But it's funny because when you say that, you know, when you're like, oh, people assume you speak Spanish and you're probably a janitor. I mean, in my life experience, yeah, like my mom worked in, you know, she had to clean homes or clean villas as a way to make ends meet. She worked a state job and she had a good career, which she just recently retired from. But in order to make ends meet, we had to find a way to make money somewhere else. So she was having to work cleaning villas Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday and Sunday. And guess who was with her cleaning the villas? Me. So I'm a Latino male cleaning villas. I fit the stereotype. Like, there's no way. Like, how can I escape that? How can I work around that? And is that necessarily a bad thing if we're making extra money now, and nobody else wants to clean except
we're taking the jobs that nobody really wants.
Yeah. I mean, and my church, shout out to Crosspoint Espanol. My church really focuses on the reality that Orlando and Osceola County, Orange County included, we're seeing a surge of the Latino population growing exponentially. Like something like 100 Latino families are moving into the Orlando area, Osceola, Orange County, daily or weekly, something like that, like something crazy. And so as the church gears to target the Latino community, that the Spanish speaking community specifically, we're seeing the reality that Hispanic community is assuming jobs that nobody else wants: the janitors, the construction workers, the laborers, and so is that a stereotype, or is that that's a reality?
That's a reality.
But why is it bad? Why is it bad? You know, why do people look down to it when you need your lawn cut? You know, why you look down to it when you need your house cleaned or you need your restaurant cleaned? Why is that frowned upon when a service is being provided? And I know some people who make bank doing that as a career. They make more money than the VPs working in corporate offices. They make dough. So who's the sucker? Is it the guy who's wearing the suit having to sit in the office and stress out about numbers? Or is it the person who works 6 hours a day or 5 hours a day, mowing lawns, don't have to think about anything? He's killing the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we to your point, like racism in that regard, it's like we get put in a box.
Yep. And I mean, it's not necessarily only, say, for example, the Hispanics, the black community, the Asians, everyone that's not white necessarily, but it's also touching on touchy subjects. It's something like I always talk about to, say, for example, one of my friends, he's a very strong black activist, but I usually interpreted, or I told him in a certain manner, that even blacks in themselves have turned slightly racist. So you'll see, say, for example, automatically, there's a white guy that wants to play basketball. Like, say, for example, we're playing ball, and there's a white guy that just drives up, and he's like, yo, hey, can I play? What is usually the stereotype that goes with that?
That dude can't ball.
That dude can't ball. He's white. He got no, like, jump.
No hops.
He got no jump.
That's
and I
it.
remember watching the movies in the 90s of that.
White Man Can't Jump?
Yes, exactly.
Love that movie. And he was balling it up, too. He was killing the game.
Yep. And I mean, they don't like touching on that subject. They'll usually always assume, say, for example, we're talking about a conversation, and I could say, oh, yes, this person did this, this, and that, and they would automatically respond with, yeah, that's what white people do. Automatically right there, you're already putting skin color. You're putting people in that stereotype, race, or you could say, oh, he's Muslim, he does this, or he's Asian, he does that. Like, say, for example, I'm Asian, and people can be like, oh, he's going to be super smart.
You are super, super smart, though. That's the crazy thing. This man's living up to the stereotype. Oh, my God.
But, yes, you have that. You have that, and people don't really notice what's happening. Instead of them being a light or being an example of change, they're accepting a completely different. So it's just not the white people that have associated a colorblind mentality. It's also the black community, the Hispanics, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's any one of us that have experienced something. We've been around, we've been around black community, and we're listening to the loud music, and we see fights break out, and people drinking 40s or whatever, smoking weed, and we see that as the standard. We see that as the average. So we're like, that's who they are. As I walk and I walk through neighborhoods and things like that, I'm like, yeah, this is who they are. Or the white community, experiencing people getting drunk, or getting all kind of STDs because they just doing all kinds of things and blah blah. Or the Latino community with the tattoos and the drugs and the gangs but a lot of that are things that I've seen with my eyes, and a lot of that have been things that I've experienced. And you start to create labels on people rather than saying, this person at this time did that. we automatically say black people are like this. We automatically say Latinos are like this. We automatically say white people are like this. And that's not necessarily true. There's some white dudes out there that they can rap with the best of them. They can play ball with the rest of them. They can, and there's some black dudes that don't have any rhythm. They can't dance. There's Latinos that don't speak Spanish. There's, they're not good with their hands. They don't know how to fix things. Yep. So there's a lot of what we experience, and it's our fault individually for putting complete labels on people. Yep. But when we make labels like, oh, the police are doing this. Well, no, the police, the two police officers that were from that town did that. But when we put a full label, oh, police are doing this.
And then you see everyone saying, I hate the police.
Correct. But the police that I've had experience with, I've experienced some real jerks, but I got family members and friends that are police officers, and they're awesome. They're awesome people. They're good at what they do. And the police officers that I've had to deal with, some were jerks, but most of them were good. So I can point and say, those police officers, that guy was a jerk. That guy was an idiot. The police officers in that town of New Mexico, those two cops, they were the ones that did whatever it was that they did. So let's blame them. And maybe even we could extend it to that police department. But when we just start to put a flat label on people in general, it's tough. It's difficult. It's a tough hole to climb out of. And I know anyone who's listening who has been a victim of racism, or maybe you've had the mentality that all people are this way, then it becomes very, very difficult to deal with. How do we get out of that? How do we get out of that mindset?
I mean, it's just like what we've been talking about previously before. It's not necessarily accepting the culture. It's being counterculture.
That's it.
It's being more into the image of Christ, having the love, the passion, the unconditional love, like we were talking about with the kids. Like, seriously, looking at someone and saying, I love you, even though they've done this and this and that, or they have a stereotype over them. Like, it's tough, but it's something we need to do.
Yeah, we have to start to see people as individuals and not see people by their skin color. But it's okay to acknowledge the fact that we're different. We have different cultures. Me and G, I'm not Dominican. I love their food, though. But we have different cultures. We're not the same. We didn't grow up in the same place. But the more we associate, the more we become like-minded, and the more we become alike. So that's cool. We like similar music. I don't like anime. He loves anime. But that's not because I'm Asian. Oh my goodness, it's because he's Asian. You see that stereotype? Ding, ding, ding. See, we need some buttons here that kind of. Anyway, so I think we start to treat people as individuals, and that's tough. Yep. That's very difficult to do, to start to treat people individually, but recognize that we have our differences, and there's some cultural things that are strange to us. I don't understand everybody's cultural norms. I don't understand why people eat certain things. I don't understand why people make certain types of celebrations. But ultimately, I think it culminates with the fact that in John 3:16, it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life."
Not a certain group like some people usually like to associate.
No.
Like the Mormons, they think it's a white church. Jehovah's Witnesses, they believe it's only their people, not knowing that it's as a whole. Yeah, it's regardless, and it's devoid of economic background, of ethnicity, of race, of gender, of social class, of education. It's devoid of any of that. It says God so loved the world. He sees everybody. He sees kings, and he sees peasants. He sees the PhD holders like Chris Busey, and he sees people who have dropped out of high school. He sees all of us, and he says, you all need the cross. You all need Christ. You all need the atoning, saving grace that only is provided through the Lord Jesus Christ, that you are enemies of God, but through the sacrifice
He acted as a propitiation for sin, where the anger of God, the wrath of God that should be on us was placed on Jesus, and he absorbed it. He did that for everybody.
Yep.
He
We
did
have
that
a
for
new
everybody.
identity in him.
That's it. I don't have to be identified as a Hispanic or Latino male. I don't have to be identified as I look Middle Eastern. Apparently, my background is my family's from Israel. My deep background is from
I did
Israel.
not know that.
Yeah, little facts on Mike the Baptist. Yeah, my deep history is Israeli, and so if that's true, I'm not a terrorist. You know what I'm saying? Like, God doesn't show partiality or favoritism to anyone. We see that in Scripture. We see that in Deuteronomy, Acts. And I love, Paul addressing in Acts 17 says, he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, having determined their appointed time and the boundaries of their habitation. Did you hear that? God determined their appointed time and the boundaries of the habitation. So if you're Asian, if you have that straight hair, if you got them slanted eyes, if you eat with chopsticks, whatever you eat with, God appointed you for that. It's okay. Your differences, it's all right. God appointed you so that you could be Asian. He appointed you to be a mixed breed like G. He appointed you to be black and have lighter skin or darker skin, or he appointed that. Why are we denying that? Why are we fighting that? Why are we bleaching our skin? Why are we trying to get more tan? It's sexier to be tan. So you have people of lighter skin forcing themselves to get a tan one way or another.
And I saw something recently about that. Some model was getting herself darker.
Yeah,
because of that.
putting on what is that, tanner? They just rub some tanner on their skin.
So, yes. Because
we're not satisfied with the fact that having determined their appointed time and their boundaries of habitation, or the reality that God knows every hair on your head, that he formed you in the womb, as it says in Psalms. He created you in the womb. He knows you. He sewed your muscles together. He put you together. And so why are we fighting the fact that I have curly hair? Well, right now it's short, so it's not curly, but why are we fighting the fact that I have curly hair? Why are we fighting the fact that I have a big nose and big ears? Like, he made that. Why alter that? Why be so foolish in our thinking that we have to alter ourselves or think that I'm not good enough because I don't have lighter skin, or I'm not good enough because I don't have darker skin? Who cares? You're perfectly and wonderfully made. You're made in his image. And it says in 1 John 2:11, but the one who hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in darkness and does not know where he is going because the darkness has blinded his eyes. Oof. So we say we love God, but if we hate our brothers, if we're willing to segregate, if we're willing to judge our brothers, those particularly who are in Christ, and we can't trust him because he's black. I can't trust him because he's white. I can't trust him because he's Latino. And this is not something that's going to change overnight. Only God and the Holy Spirit is going to change our perspective if we are able to cling to the cross and understand who we are individually in light of who he is in his eternal glory. That is the only way we're going to be able to put life into perspective. So it's not easy, dude. It's not easy.
Yep.
It's not easy. But in his grace, we can make it happen. And there's a great book by John Piper called Bloodlines. I haven't read it, but I've gifted it to people not having read it. That's like the dumbest thing I could do. I should read it before I gift it, right? But I've gifted it to people, and they've just said, wow, this book is amazing. It's really put things into perspective. So based on their experience with the book, I'm going to say, pick up the book by John Piper, Bloodlines. Check it out. Talks about this very topic and how there's a desperate need for Jesus because through him we break those barriers. And there was racism, there was tension among, different groups, the Samaritans and the Jews and all, and Jesus was like, nah, man, that's not how you do things. It's not how we roll. That's not who God is. And yeah, our faith is exclusive because Christ has paid the penalty for sin, but it is inclusive of all people. So it's like, man, what does that look like? And, we'll definitely dive into more of the theological realm of that later episodes. But right now we're going to jump right into, we're going to get Chris on the phone. We're going to get his thoughts on this topic of racism, and he's going to give us some insight as to what we should be talking about and some of the great topical points. So let's get him on the phone. We are here with Chris Busey, and so Chris is calling us from Texas, all the way from Texas. My boy. Tex-Mex, that's what you're trying to grab right now?
That's exactly what I'm trying to get, man, before I head back to Florida.
Now, when I was in Austin, Chris took me around, and man, not gonna lie, those food trucks, banging.
In-N-Out Burger, though.
In-N-Out Burger, what is that? In Austin?
In-N-Out Burger, period.
I'm actually at a food truck now. It's like a barbecue.
So, Chris, let's jump right into this. So our topic this week is racism. And for the last few weeks, we've been talking about the presence of evil in our culture and the fact that evil exists in general. And so part of that is the existence of hatred, because hatred stems from evil, and racism in our culture is definitely evil. And we've already touched on some of the Bible verses that outline the fact that any realm of prejudice or discrimination it stems from an evil heart, from evil intentions. And so
Right.
You being an expert in the field of racism, of history, particularly Black history, all over the world, what is the climate right now in the United States as far as racism and the presence of racism?
Well, I think anyone can sort of turn on the television right now and kind of get a good idea as to what the racial climate is like in the U.S. I think there's a lot of racial tension that's bubbling over that we've seen on the news. We've seen it in major cities with protests. We saw it in Orlando, in our own backyard about 4 years ago with the murder of Trayvon.
That's right,
the subsequent acquittal of Trayvon Martin. We saw it in Ferguson. We saw it in Baltimore with Freddie Gray. We saw it in Staten Island, New York. We saw it in Ohio with Tamir Rice. We saw it in Minnesota with Philando Castile. And it's unfortunate. When you think about just the list of references I just gave, and that doesn't even include Sandra Bland, the guy in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Charlotte, North Carolina. It goes on, and as well as South Carolina. And I'm sure I'm forgetting plenty more that's out there. So you can only look to those as sort of a baseline example of, again, the racial climate in the U.S. I think a lot of it stems from this belief in a colorblind society, right? Because after the Civil Rights Movement, after Martin Luther King, everyone sort of said, racism doesn't exist anymore, or we're experiencing a period of massive racial progress, which isn't true. But we all know that racism existed, but we failed to have those conversations, right? And so now that things are again more transparent, technology has turned racism on its head, because now you don't need a secret recording like we saw with Rodney King. People are straight whipping out their cell phones and recording it for themselves.
Sure.
And it's bringing it to people's living room. It's bringing it to people's television sets live. And it's not a conversation that people brush under the rug anymore.
Yeah. I know you and I had a discussion before about, about the topic, and particularly when it comes to seeing that the African American community is, it's not just today, but through all types of cultures. I mean, you've been around the world and you've done a lot of world studies, particularly the Caribbean and so forth. So, what has been the trend in your studies regarding racism in other countries? And it seems like the darker skinned people, wherever you've done your studies and wherever we find different reports, the dark skin have been the target of the most oppression and the most racism.
Yeah, man. I mean, so it all stems from the idea, and I'm gonna be specific when I talk about racism in this regard, because like I do in my work, I try and centralize the idea of anti-black racism, and this is a global phenomenon, as you just mentioned. Regardless of where you go, the darker you are, statistics show that you're less likely to have access to quality health care, education, employment, some of the basic necessities, right? Which makes it honestly an issue of human rights. It's not even an issue of civil rights. It's deeper than that. And so, what a lot of my work, my travels, have taken me to and have led me to understand is that regardless of where you are in this globe, racism is real, and I think we can have a tendency to focus on racism as if it's just an issue in the U.S. But man, you look at Colombia right now, you look at Brazil. There's a recent statistic that just came out of Brazil, which said 82 youth die daily in Brazil, and 77% of those 82 youth are Afro-Brazilian. So there's no way of disputing the anti-black notions that undergird racism across the globe.
Now, the thought is, and I think I brought this up to you a long time ago as well, you have a community of people that are experiencing this kind of oppression, and why don't they just pick themselves up off, from their bootstraps and just walk out of whatever environment they're dealing with? Or why don't they just start their own businesses? Why don't they just, bank in their own institutions? Like, what attributes to some of the, like you said, they don't have access to the same kind of health care or the job opportunities, etc. But what prevents a community, regardless of their, their ethnic background, but particularly those who have African descent, what's causing this kind of, this standstill in being able to progress and continuing to see oppression and all of that?
Right. I mean, I think you have to look institutional, man. When I was younger, obviously, and uninformed and not really aware of like the literature, I had that understanding that race and racism is based on individual actions, but as I've come to read and learn and develop as a scholar, as an intellectual, I've started to realize it's all institutional. So when you look at America's institutions, or even the world's institutions, right? And you look at politics as an institution, you look at the church as an institution, you look at education as an institution, you look at media as another institution, you look at who runs all four of those, for example. And there are more institutions that we could point at. But education is written largely by white men and tells the story of white men. So people of color, blacks, Latinos, they don't grow up knowing their history unless it comes from the community or it comes from a teacher who's actually critical When you look at politics, just look at a mural of every single president in the U.S. with the exception of Obama. They're all white. When you look at the church, and although the church has historically been prominent in the black community, you look at the voices that have been prioritized in terms of the church, right? And they're majority white voices in terms of the literature that's written, in terms of the people who we hold as sort of the purveyors of theological thought. They're white for the most part. And so it all stems from those institutions, man. It's the top. I see it personally as a top-down rendering of racism.
So do you think, just based merely off the fact that the reference, so from me being part of the minority community, and as I look up for role models and I look to people to inspire me, I don't see people that look like me. I don't necessarily see people that I can relate to, because those that are famed are generally not part of at least in this culture, we're sticking to this culture for now, are generally not from the minority groups, Hispanics and blacks. So do you think that has a lot to do with the standstill or the inability to progress in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, that plays a major role, man. And I mean, research has pointed out, you say, for example, just the sheer lack of black scientists and Latino or Latina scientists and engineers, for example. And then when you look at, let's just say, for example, the curriculum, K-12 curriculum, you may be learning about George Washington Carver, Nancy Ochoa, maybe that's it, right? And so young children, from the time that they enter school up until our adulthood, is how we're being socialized. You start to believe that you can be based on what you're seeing, so to say. They're outliers, of course, right? But for the most part, it again comes back to this institutional thing. The curriculum is institutional. What we're seeing is put forth by a particular institution.
Good point. Yeah. So as a university professor, you're talking to your students, you're showing them all these things. How do you lead them in the discourse to start to think along the lines that they can be more creative, more open, more understanding? How do you lead your students in this kind of dialogue?
Oh, man, it's challenging. I mean, I can't front. That's probably one of the most challenging parts of my job because, obviously I'm a black male. I'm a black male educator in the field of education. And so most of the teachers most of the people who want to be teachers and study teaching are white females, right? That's like 85% of the teaching population. And so I get a lot of resistance. I get a lot of pushback. Obviously, some of that is coming because I'm challenging their positionality. And I do so in a way that gives the topic, or the experience rather, justice. I'm not going to sugarcoat it with my students. We address it in a very overt, in a very direct and candid way. And, sometimes that leads to a tense classroom, man. And, I just have to realize, man, I'm chipping away little by little. And I hope that my students get it primarily because they're going to be teaching children of color. And these are things that they need to be aware of for the livelihood of these kids. But it's not easy, man. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. Why is there, so as they go into the workforce and they're going to teach students and they have this diverse group of students where, more students are graduating high school of, part of the minority groups, and more students are attending colleges and so forth, and then you have people like you that eventually start to lead, and we see that more and more, and hopefully that becomes a trend that's continuous. What needs to be done, or what do you need to do as a teacher, as an instructor, to be mindful of the fact that you have this diversity in your classroom? Like, is that even important, or should you just, because you're hearing the notion now that people are people. We need to all lives matter. So why do we have to put a special emphasis on the fact that we have minority students in the classroom, and it's more prominent than ever?
So me personally, man, I see it as an ethical and a moral imperative. People have a right to learn their histories, man. People have a right. There should be a right to know your heritage, to know where you're from, to know the contributions your people have made, not just to U.S. society, but to the formation of this world, politically, economically, theologically, socially. Again, to me, that's a moral and ethic imperative. And I say that because, again, when you look at teachers, everything is built towards a Eurocentric understanding. And if we're not altering or challenging that Eurocentric understanding, this is how people go out in the world, especially children of color, just kind of unaware of the power dynamics, right? Our lived experiences, and when I say our, I'm speaking as a person of color, don't necessarily align with that Eurocentric viewpoint, man, of history, of economics, our social understandings, our political understandings. All of that is different, and it's based on experience. And, teachers have to be mindful of that, man, and they have to prepare kids to go out and navigate the world around them.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And so what are your thoughts as far as, I guess this is more personal opinion-ish thing that I'm going to ask, but, when you have the stereotypes that are presented, so whether, any minority group, and then you have the presence of entertainment where the stereotypes are almost lived out in our face daily. How do you counteract that? Like, what? And it's tough because we don't want to put that as an excuse to say, well, that's them, that's not us, or that doesn't speak or represent the population as a whole. But, when I look at novelas, for the Hispanic population or the Latino population, it's like there's a certain thing there. It's sexy, it's suave, it's this and that. But, I don't think I necessarily fall in that category.
Or
you know what I mean?
Asians, they're super smart.
Yeah.
Right, Asian, smart and mysterious and all that. But, I know a few Asians that aren't that smart, not that mysterious. You know what I'm saying? So, like, how do we deal with that? Like, from your standpoint, I know it's really opinion-based, but, how do you see that playing out? How do you counteract that? I mean, I know I struggle with that for sure.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, man, that's a tough one, right? Because, I think when it comes to stereotypes and trying to counteract stereotypes, one of the things we have to think about is the idea of respectability politics, right? Changing who we are to appear more palatable or acceptable to white people, right? And that's like one of the ways in which we can like counter stereotypes. And some people may not even be cognizant of it, right? Like, why you're challenging that stereotype might be rooted in respectability politics. And I try to stay away from that. Now, on the other hand, you have certain stereotypes like you brought up in media, right? And like I think about hip-hop a lot with it. Stereotypes of the black male, and then you got a particular rapper who might go out and just straight up embody every single stereotype of the black male. And I've been trying to give it a lot of thought, like ways in which I think about that. am I assigning negativity based on a particular standard, or
I was
am
just
I really
thinking
gonna
that.
look at? Yeah, because that's the thing, right? What's the standard?
Right. Why is it negative for, and I'm going to use the typical stereotype, like, who cares if black people like fried chicken? Like, I like fried chicken, you know what I'm saying? Like, but who cares? Why is that even labeled a stereotype? Because bang.
KFC's everywhere.
Church's chicken.
What you know about Church's chicken?
No, I mean, but, so, like, that's one of the things, right? Like, even myself, as a young black professor, I think I came at things very wrong in the way that I approached my class. So I used to approach my class trying not to be the stereotype. Then I had to understand, man, that the way that I speak, the way that I talk, that's a part of my community, that's a part of my upbringing. And me trying to change my vernacular to represent more standard English wasn't just rooted in me trying to appear more professional. It was rooted in me trying to be less of a stereotype, and that's not cool.
That's huge.
I've had to come to understand that. Like, I have to be who I am, and I have to understand that that stereotype has been assigned, right? And it's not necessarily doesn't necessarily have to be something negative. And again, man, that's what makes that conversation complex, right? Because, it's multi-layered. There's certain stereotypes that you don't want to ascribe to. And I don't even see that as a stereotype, man. I just see that as a way of being a human that you don't want to ascribe to.
Sure. I know you're a busy man. One quick question, and we'll let you go. So what's the solution then? Ultimately, from your standpoint, being someone who is heavy in research and all kinds of publications, what is the solution, at least in our standpoint, for this generation, the millennial, the Generation X guys? What is the solution for us as we carry the torch and we push this country forward? Like, what should be done? How should we carry ourselves? Like, I mean, what are your thoughts?
If it was that easy, bro.
Yeah.
I'll say, I think starting off, man, we have to be anti-racist, man. And I know that this podcast is supposed to be from a theological standpoint, so I'll speak to more of a theological or church-going audience, so to say. I was in Orlando at the time that Trayvon was killed, and I became real disenchanted with the local church community, my church, some of the people I was doing church with and fellowshipping with, largely because you have this big elephant in the room, right? A big elephant in the city hovering around you, this large cloud surrounding racism, racial tension. And at not one time did we pray about it in my small groups. Did my pastor or any of the associate pastors or leadership of the church call together like some kind of church town hall meeting, some kind of discussion? At not one point was the curriculum for a small group meeting geared towards race and racism, as if the Bible ignores it, because it doesn't, right?
Nope, it does not.
And that's what I'm saying, man. Like, we have to be anti-racist. So, ways in which, like, I think about ways in which the church could have demonstrated anti-racism, could have come out and specifically rejected the profiling of young black men, right? When you think about the way you and I dress, we could have very easily been confused for Trayvon.
Easy.
Rocking a hoodie with some jeans, some J's, some Nikes, whatever, coming back from a corner store. Churches have to be, just like every other institution, more overt, in my opinion, about addressing racism in society. And that means we're trying to create people who actively reject racism. I think people have tried to find excuses to not talk about it, or different ways to view it from a colorblind lens. And I don't think we're going to make progress that way. I think we got to be straightforward about it.
And there you have it, episode 8. That's it. So check us out on Facebook, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. I mean, he's putting things together that I don't understand.
I mean, we should have an Instagram soon.
We should have an Instagram soon. Matter of fact, we've been talking about doing a Facebook Live.
We got to do Facebook Live as
so
well.
We're going to get that going pretty soon. Shout out to Matthew Movement once again. Wear what you believe, MatthewMovement.com. You can definitely email us if you have questions or you want to hear certain topics, you want to hear us wrestle through it, or if you want us to get an expert in the field, we can figure that out. So send us an email at proofbeyondreason@gmail.com. But for now, it's your boy Geology over there sitting across from me.
Yes, for those who commented on YouTube as well, thank you for commenting. I have not forgotten. I will respond to you guys. You guys have been saying, good listen, this is good, keep it up. So
thank you so much for those who have been sending us comments and sharing the post. Keep sharing, please. That's the only way we're going to get the message out. That's the only way we're going to get this thing rolling, is if you are sharing it. And I've gotten some great feedback. I've had single people, I've had married couples just hit me up and say, man, I need this. This has been great. So we're not stopping. We're going to keep it going. And hopefully Ivan, the average, whoever he is, Lord Suave, if wherever Lord Suave is, we need him back. So when he gets back, we'll touch on other topics. But next week, episode 9, actually we're taking a week off.
Yes.
Because it's the 4th of July week. So we're going to take that week off. We're going to be with our families. And we're coming back strong the following week with episode 9. So stay tuned. We love y'all. Peace.